And today our topic is five elements and as it pertains to brainwave states.
Yes.
And this will be our upcoming class. Will be on this topic. And also, even after the class, it will be available for people to take online. But I think this is going to be, I'm excited about this topic because I don't know where it's even going to go. So let's jump in.
Yeah, well, I'm excited about the topic too, mostly because from the very beginning of my career, uh, I was primarily Western science. I was trained in very well in Western science, and of course, going back, to the beginning, everybody took LSD, right? And then, so there was Western science, and then there was LSD, and then and there was another scientist, Timothy Leary, who said you should take this for Western science, and uh, I really was young. I was probably 19, 20, and also I was very involved in completing my degrees. And what began to happen was I began to think, there's more to life than science. I always knew that through music, but I never associated it the same way. And so then I said, well, maybe science is integrative in some way that I haven't really thought about that at that point. And then I began to think, well, if people lived a long time ago, what if you take away cars and you take away stereos and movies and what we think is modern life, what exactly was going on for them? And it was the same thing that's going on for us, but probably slower, right? So they had to deal with eating, they had to deal with family, they had to deal with relationships, they had to deal with pets, animals, whatever it may be, crossing rivers, going places. They were dealing with everything we were dealing with now, and I think somehow seeing alternate realities through the psychedelic experience, which now, of course, is considered to be therapy, right? And
Well, it went through a phase of like illegal and
yeah,
now it's
oh,
therapeutic.
I know, yeah, from very illegal to now all of a sudden it has all kinds of great uses. But when I was doing it, it didn't have any great uses. But we all knew it did, but it wasn't necessarily sanctioned by the government, although it was legal, completely legal at the time. But it opened oneself up to thinking about things you maybe wouldn't have thought about, or buying into the orthodoxy of something you may not have bought into.
Okay, I just want to
So
mention, I just want to interrupt for 1 second, just talking about like back in those days when you're saying it was legal, so people were just doing it. It's not the same nowadays, like the culture around
no, it's not the same
at
at all.
all. Yeah.
And the drugs take on the culture.
Mhm.
Back then we called ourselves the counterculture or something like that. Uh, but and I didn't do a whole lot. I just it just opened me up, in ways that I hadn't imagined. But at the same time, it didn't stop me from pursuing my work, pursuing my science, pursuing everything in my life. It just I began to take a bigger, wider picture. And the wider picture really was just about, if I'm going to be in therapy and do psychotherapy and so on, and psychology, I would be working with people. And I said, what's the difference now between people back then and now? And I came across basically what I call today five element theory. And we also would look upon that as the chakras and the caduceus and so on. As it was, in other words, an ancient language system to describe different states of living and different states of consciousness that one would have. But these language systems were developed 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and so on. And when I would ask my professors, they'd say, "This is crazy. Anybody that developed something back then has no idea about what's going on now." And I kept thinking, well, what are you talking about? They had the same stuff going on we do, right? I mean, and so they just had to wait 10 years, 100 years for the Romans to get there, but they were worried about being, wars and stuff like that. So it made no sense to me what I was being told by the rigid, more orthodox science community. And so I was lucky enough that I came across a book by Hans Selye. Hans Selye is a PhD biochemist. He's from, I think, Austria. And he's the grandfather, the developer of our modern stress science. And Hans Selye said something very interesting. He said that from the time he was first training as a physician, he knew there was something in the ancient knowledge systems that the physicians were using that had to do with, how these people lived from day to day, how it was they managed their life, they managed, changes in their life and so on, and they developed systems for that. And so he basically discovered the biochemistry of what we call stress today. Well, stress, in his terms, was just the ability to change and creatively adapt to different changes in life. And he said that when he discovered this, the biochemistry, he said he couldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights because in his dreams, all the ancient physicians were coming to him and thanking him. And he said, I've done nothing, all I've done in my work is add the biochemistry. Everything else has been there for thousands of years. And doctors have approached it in different ways, in different languages. Now we can begin integrating this into the biochemistry so we can have a more unified approach. And those ancient ways and ancient languages are basically what we would call the chakras today from an Indian perspective, from a Western alchemic perspective with Carl Jung and so on. It's the 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, earth. Right? So you're looking at something very old, and as far as I'm concerned, the 5 elements are a stress management system. They integrate perfectly, and they are in fact superior to, as far as I'm concerned, many aspects of a more scientific-based stress management system. And I know because I studied in depth at that point Hans Selye, stress management, the biochemistry, and also the Western approaches to how to deal with stress. And I was able then to study the 5 element theory, first through my work with Jungian psychotherapy and alchemy, secondly through my work with polarity therapy, which integrated Western alchemy and Ayurvedic medicine. And then I went to India and I did a residency in Ayurvedic medicine where we went into depth in the 5 elements and how they functioned and help people manage basically change in their life or stress. They've been helping people manage change in their life or stress for over 1,000 years. So it's a very refined system. And whether then after that I studied 5 element acupuncture, which even though the terms are different, they have metal and wood, underneath of it is exactly the same system, managing change. How do we manage change? It basically comes back to Charles Darwin. It's not how intelligent you are, how many skills and so on that you have. It all comes down to your ability to manage, change, and creatively evolve. So every one of my books has the 5 elements in it, right? Everywhere I put it. Mm-hmm. And the more older I get, the more refined I get with it. It's a system of knowledge that never, ever ends. I've got thousands of hours of study in it, in Western alchemy, and Rudolf Steiner medicine, and Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine. It's integral to all these indigenous medicines, and so I'm excited because I finally came to this wonderful realization. I've been there all along. I've always talked about it. I just somehow began to realize I could teach it. That we have in modern science, this concept of brainwaves, we say alpha, basically delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. These brain waves are basically just waves that come through our body. These waves are basically quantum generated. This is the recent discoveries in quantum neurology by within microtubules in our neuromicrotubules in our brain, and also coming down through our central core and vagus nerve. And they're sending waves out like this. We're constantly sending waves out, and they're receding like so on. So we're vibrational beings. But when you look at this idea of waves coming out, and you look at the ancient idea of waves moving like this as a caduceus, and then spinning off other waves, they're unbelievably similar, right? There's just no mistake. They're basically representing the same thing. And then if you look at the 5 elements, they're basically very, very simple. They're going from real slow to real fast. So you have earth, which is down to earth, really slow, and you go through fire and air, you get to air, it's going da 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 da, very fast like this. So they're like gears of a car going slow to fast. And you have to think of it as, I think many of you have watched my podcast, you know I like fuzzy logic. So you have to think of it as like, there's not a chakra here, there's a chakra there, there's a chakra there. You think of it as a light dimmer switch, like when you just go a little bit up, a little bit down, and so on. So as you go up a little bit, you get faster and faster, you go down, you get slower and slower. And within this continuum, up and down, which in Indian medicine called shashuma, right? You go up, you go down. You have this constant ability to change your speeds, right? So even though we talk about there's a chakra here, a chakra there, you don't leap to that next chakra. You're just literally rising and falling. And as you get to certain places, you're then able to tune in, and that's going to change your speed of your life. And when you change the speed of your life and how you're perceiving something, you're simultaneously changing scientifically your brainwave patterns, and beyond that, you're changing your consciousness and how you relate to it. So I really want to go into brainwave patterns and the 5 elements and chakras and how to use them with sound and movement, especially every day. Not so much for psychotherapy, but for life coaching, for wellness, for every challenge you have in your life. How can you consciously understand the 5 element language as a stress management system, put it together in a creative way, and then apply it to any situation in your life? That's the goal of this class.
And what's the relation, more accurate, like how would you explain more of the relationship between brainwave states and elements, or
Well, I think
chakras?
the relationship is really quite simple. This is one of delta slow, earth is slow.
Okay.
Theta is a little faster, water's a little faster. Except for now, we're looking at brainwave states versus behaviors, that would be caused by those states. So when you look into the 5 element system, after thousands of years, they'll look at Earth and say, these are the behaviors that go when one is going slow. You can hear a lower voice, certain colors go with it. In other words, there's just certain behaviors that accompany the slowness that one can now see in the life around them, versus it being a scientific concept of a wave in your body that you're just going to entrain to. And then we further have, I call it the science of Pascal Fries. He's a biochemist. He's done a lot of work with brainwaves. And he's one of I get my favorite scientists, like I get my favorite gurus, I don't know. But Pascal Fries, he came up with this concept, it's called featured attention. What means basically that whatever you focus on, right, if you externally, that you really want, you now come in congruency with it, even though it's a vision, or even though it could be just actually a physical behavior. The moment you do that, you begin to change your brain waves. Now, he looks at things more from a brainwaves perspective. But if you would take featured attention and apply the same principle to the five elements, it's the same thing. Except for the differences with the five elements, you get much more breadth of field and possibility for creating that's far more practical than using normal EEG technology and so on that a scientist might use.
Well,
It's much more.
what's an example? Can you give an example of how you
Yeah,
might
that you say, well, in my life, I need to express myself more. I need to be more outward, and so on, right? So you could just go on a machine, and then you'd want to probably focus more on an alpha brainwave state, possibly with a little theta. So you can actually then you can train yourself to have those alpha brainwaves, maybe with the vision of expressing yourself, or just to train the brainwaves by themselves, so that the situation comes up, you have a familiarity with that particular switch into that particular brain frequency. Whereas with the five element theory, you can actually practice and rehearse and get louder with your voice. You can get quicker with your movements, or in the case of the tuning forks, you can create a tuning fork concert that would go with the visualization, or the way that you would strategize, putting the elements together to meet a certain situation, right? So you can I would call it yin and yang. You can be very active with the five elements, or very passive, right? So like obviously laying on a table and somebody tapping a certain sequence of tuning forks is a passive situation. Or you can take the same sequence of tuning forks and move your body in patterns that are congruent with the elements that you want to work with. Or if you don't even want to use tuning forks, you can use certain types of music to inspire you to work towards that elemental sequence that you need to meet a challenge in your life.
Can you just give another example of like an elemental challenge that someone might have that would be easily identifiable? Because I think if you think too much about it, it could be very complicated, but it is very intuitive. You know, if you're angry, it's fire. You know?
It's fire. If you want to slow down, it's earth.
Right.
You know, so if someone says, you need to slow down, right? I'm slow right now. And you start talking like, no. I think the best thing that came from me was we often talk about it, when I first came to New York, I talked slow because I'm from Indiana. So I didn't know I talked slow. So I had the opposite. So people would say, John, you need to talk faster. Well, that's moving up to more air, right? So from Indiana's in the United States is considered the heartland, or it's the place of where we grow lots of corn and so on, lots of fields. And so if it's in my native tongue, the Indiana tongue, I'm like, well, okay.
Well, luckily
Yeah.
on most videos now we have the option of speeding up the video.
Yeah, well,
So
I try to talk faster too. But even when I think I'm talking faster, people from New York still tell me you're talking too slow. Right. So,
but that's interesting. It's actually interesting that it's almost in a market. I don't know if it's marketing, but in a way that satisfies everyone's element. They do offer on most videos to speed up or slow down.
yeah,
So
they do.
that people can hear it in their own speed, in a sense, and their own element.
It's true. But that speed is a state of consciousness. Right. I can observe somebody, like if I'm in psychotherapy and somebody's going really fast, and I know what slow is, I have a relative thing. And the difference between, for example, when I couldn't go faster, that's limiting for me. Right? I was bound in a way by a culture that I'd grown up in. I didn't know any better. And I got to New York and I was overwhelmed by how quickly people would talk and move. But and I had to go to acting school to learn how to talk faster. And I went to all sorts of things to get myself to move faster and be more like a New Yorker. And then I began to see the world differently. I don't know, it's good, it's not better or worse, it's just another view of the world. And then I would joke with people about in New York, if I were to take you back to Indiana, you couldn't see the world like that. You go nuts because you couldn't slow down to do it. So
Did
what
you
we're looking
did you feel that it broadened broadened your perspective, and that you were, because you had this new experience of being faster, you could be more.
Oh, totally. I mean, New York City, New York was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, the first year, if I didn't have a contract with New York University to do my work, I would have quit. I would have walked away and gone back home. But after that year of having to completely change adjust, talk faster, deal with New Yorkers, horns going off, I fell in love with it. So all of a sudden, I went to it. But when I did that, I could see things differently that I never could have seen had I stayed in where I grew up at. Right? And at the same time, it affected me in my therapy with people, because I knew what super slow was, and I now knew what fast was. Right? And I now knew where they were at, and I could see where a lot of New Yorkers were stuck in fast. Right? They needed to slow down, but I needed to go fast to meet them where they were at to help them slow down. I couldn't have done that before. That's why the other psychiatrist that supervised me said, John, you got to talk to them where they're at, because when you talk with them now, they're hallucinating between your words. Right?
But it's important for a healer or a sound healer or any type of person who's doing some therapy to meet the person where they are. And you talk about the Healing Alliance. So
that's the scientific name for it, the Therapeutic Alliance or the Healing Alliance.
And then also, in conjunction with that, you also talk about the more frequencies you can conduct through you, the healthier you are. So the more elements you can adjust
Yes.
to or switch gears into, the more helpful, number one, you can be to others, and the more healthy you can be in yourself.
That's correct, because now you have more options for creative adaptation, right? So when I got to New York City, I didn't have more options. I wouldn't even have known any better. In fact, we had people visit us, not us, but my school from Long Island. When I was in Indiana, we thought they were crazy because the way they talked and how fast they went. But they at least said they surfed. So, but we didn't know what surf was, so it sounded so neat. We liked them, right? We didn't have an ocean in Indiana.
Oh, wow.
Right? So they were okay then. But we wanted them to leave as quick as possible because we couldn't understand them. They were going too fast. But now I can understand. It's like, I'm okay with it. I can shift up and be there and be fine with that. So that means also, if I need it, and now I have the ability, if something happens in my life somewhere where I need to go faster, to get more like this, I can shift gears. I can go there. I'm more flexible. I'm broader in the field of what I could do. I remember when I first was doing psychotherapy, and the Swiss people came from Switzerland. They were so nice. And I said, holy shit. I mean, these people aren't going to survive in New York being that nice. So I used to have to tell them, I want you to tell me to shut up and scream at me. Right? But John, I can shut up and scream at me.
It's got fire.
Yeah, it's fire. I said, you need to be more aggressive to me. I don't say this, and we'd practice what I called the loud people therapy, right? And can you insult me in therapy? And so as long as it's a sheltered workshop, we could do it. And it took me a while to get them going. And to this day, I can say every Swiss person I work with that says they're unbelievably more flexible when they get back to Switzerland. Because in Switzerland, that's true. Everybody's super nice. They eat a lot of chocolate, probably this way.
Sounds great.
Yeah, but again, the elements give me an ability to create in a therapeutic situation, a shelter situation, exercises that I can put them through, they can do, that give them that element quality, flexibility with it. Now, there's obviously people who have a certain quality that overuse it. So if somebody has a lot of fire, they could remember, I like to say elements are amoral. Elements don't care about you. So if all you know is fire and you use it for every behavior in your life, you don't have the ability to switch out of it. All you're doing is screaming, yelling, arguing, whatever it may be, and being aggressive, then you're in trouble, right? Because you can't switch gears. And we see that, I used to see it all the time with the guys I work with in the financial district in Wall Street in New York. Very aggressive. But when they got home, they couldn't turn it off. Right, so then you start seeing family issues because they couldn't switch gears. Mm-hmm. So, and also, but the same thing is they couldn't switch brainwaves. They couldn't go from, more of an alpha state, alpha beta state, to a more of a theta alpha state. They just couldn't downshift. They didn't know how. Well, of course, they could, but that involved drinking. Right, so now they're using a substance, an external substance, to do what they can't do internally, right? So we want to have a system where we can realize we need to upshift, downshift, we need to do this to adapt to whatever is going on in our life externally.
And in your experience, is it easy for people to become aware of this?
It's one of these, yes, this is also something that has taken me many years to come to terms with. It's unbelievably simple to become aware of it. It's very fast. You can get it almost, you get the essence of it right away. And you can apply it right away. And at the same time, it has unbelievable depth, right? So I spent so long with some of the Indian Ayurvedic practitioners listening to the elements in the pulse. They spend 7 generations doing it. So you can, and the elements get associated not just with mental behaviors, but physical behaviors. So for example, if you're angry a lot, and then anger is stuck in your system, and it can't be expressed correctly, it's pushed back down, and they would talk about it could cause an ulceration, a fire that burns, and on and on. So you have now physical behaviors that are, which really is part of modern stress science, which causes stress, causes physical behaviors. Yeah. They had a whole system of mapping that into the body and what to do about it in terms of movement, behaviors, thoughts, and so on. The key always being meditation, or what I would call C&G, or coherence. And from there, having to learn creative behaviors and creative eating patterns that would support those new behaviors that you need. Right? So that would be, in a way, this beyond the simplicity and how quick you can get it, you can also use it to guide you even further into changing your behaviors.
And it seems like back then, or these complex modalities from ancient times were almost self-evident. It seems like these patterns were just self-evident. And
these patterns, that's right, these patterns are forever. I don't care if we have going to the moon. I love science fiction. They have all these people sitting around on another planet, and they got all the same problems they had on Earth.
Exactly. I love
it. I just watched a TV show where they're doing time. They can stop time, and stuff like that, and reset it. So it's like an atomic bomb goes off. We got to stop time. We reset back 5 days so we can go and figure out what caused this, so the Earth doesn't disintegrate. Well, sure enough, as they reset, they start looking at the relationships and people. And one guy he loses his wife. His wife dies. He says, I've got to reset time to get her back. So he sets off an atomic bomb so they'll reset time.
I know I just had this conversation with someone. It's like whatever you want to talk about, different dimensions, different planets,
Yeah,
aliens, whatever it is,
yeah,
it's you
yeah.
have it's the same stuff that's
It's
going to go on.
that's right. It's always the same stuff. I don't care. It's guaranteed. You can be. I mean, you have all these relationship with aliens, and they got the same problems too. And my favorite is you go science fiction. You're always at the bar drinking. It's science fiction.
Yeah, like nothing changes.
Exactly.
Well, it's just a testament to say that this elemental there it's well people say it's elemental meaning it's broken down to its
It's
lowest
elemental
common denominator,
to
and
a
that
common
it
denominator.
transcends the boundaries of physical world
Yeah,
and
it
situations.
behavior, it cultures and so on like that. It has cultural expressions for Earth, but Earth can be expressed in it's an archetype in Jungian psychotherapy. It can be expressed in 1,000 different ways. And Earth, this isn't Earth. Earth is like, again, fuzzy logic. There's fuzzy Earth. Everything's elements are fuzzy. There's different states within states within states because they're vibrational. So then we use scientifically what we call featured attention to fine tune. That's all it's doing. It's in training brain waves, and it does it. Although we look at it from a brainwave perspective, we say, okay, it's in training particular brain waves, but let's also now take it back and say, how are these brain waves associated with actual physical behaviors that you're doing in your life right now, and you're having for a vision that you want to manifest, a goal, or challenge, or psychotherapeutic situation, a physical situation. How can you then use it to support your interaction to be more wellness based and positive?
And viewing it in an elemental way without having to know brainwave states is easy to do.
Yes, but the reason I like the brainwave states that I've is that sometimes we put the science with the ancient knowledge, we come up with something a little different. In other words, that somehow it gives us confidence and it gives us a sense of more depth when we recognize that those that came before us weren't stupid. You know, if I were a physician 500 years ago, there's nothing that I would be dealing with that I haven't dealt with in my life now, in my practice with my patients, right? Maybe, and the science becomes more of how we could refine, because 500 years ago I'd be wanting to refine it too, to get better and better at it. So when we start integrating the science, we begin to understand the brainwave science and use it to cast the light on five elements, get away from the mysticism of it, which drives me nuts, right? It's a real practical, down-to-earth thing. And of course, when you meet a challenge, when you adapt to change in something in your life, it creates what's called eustress or euphoric state, right? So that's the mysticism right there. It's nothing unusual. You in a way, you get high, but you're not high. You're just more open and expansive because you've now expanded your universe and what's capable, right? And then it passes, and you get another problem to deal with.
Well, it's interesting. I just had this experience this past weekend where our friends couldn't find the keys to their Can-Am little, they couldn't find the keys. And it was going to be, there was 2 days of looking for these keys.
Keys.
And it was a lot of stress. And they were going to have to go to the dealer 45 minutes and change the whole transmission and everything. And they left to go do some errands. And I looked at them before they left. I said, I'm going to find them.
Right.
And it's like as if I went into some brain state of being in resonance with these keys. And within 15 minutes, I found them.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is that like, I felt like, I mean, I don't know if it has to do with elements, but I felt like it was a vision that I entrained to, and I was in some kind of brainwave state to be able to be in that place
Well,
to find them.
well, it's true. You have to be in a different state because the state that they're using to find them wasn't working.
Right.
I mean, just want to look at it that way. That's the old definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again when it's not working. And what you did was a very common suggestion in trance world and so on, which is slow down, right? You go into trance and you open yourself up and see what wants to show up, right? Versus they're probably looking there, you're looking there, and I have the same situation now. I have another pair of glasses I haven't found for 4 days. But what's interesting, I looked for them for like an hour and said, I'll wait. And I know that sooner or later they'll show up. And then I'll go, okay, that's great. But again, why should I tighten myself and go through all of this? Or my favorite is, I should be beating myself up because I'm older and have dementia. Right? I can do that too. Right? I have lots of options, but I chose to just take a deep breath, run my life, and wait them out.
Well, also, I mean, the sort of the thread, which 5 elements is definitely a thread that you do speak about. I mean, in every single class, in every book, you always mention 5 elements and adaptability. I mean, the key, I mean, there's so many fundamental things that you do teach, and adaptability is for sure a big one. And 5 elements and learning about 5 elements sounds like it's directly related to being, like you said in the beginning, having to be flexible, having to be adaptable, and it's just foundational.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's an ancient form of stress management that's unbelievably viable today, right? And it's better. I think it's far better in many ways than what a scientist would all of a sudden try to take the theory of the biochemistry and create stress management strategies just from that. Where it's much better if you look at the stress management strategies that have been used for thousands of years and adapt them to the science. That's, so techniques like meditation, techniques like Tai Chi and so on, when we see what they do in terms of coherency or sound, basically this sound has been used for thousands of years for this very reason, both for the elements and for coherency, and meditation. This is probably the most powerful of all. Sound was the basis of enlightenment, which to me just means the ability to adapt and change quickly, right? So therefore, sound healing, even though I would present this in the context of how to use tuning forks, how to use sound specifically in your daily life to supplement your strategies you can come up with for change based on elemental language, or if you want to be more scientific, you can combine it with brain tuners and brainwaves. But I still think the 5 elements gives us much more adaptability, more things we can do to integrate what we need to make the change into our life, to reach a state of euphoria, to reach the eustress, to resolve it. Right? So in the class, I very much want people to be able to make creative 5-element tuning fork sessions for yourself, for your friends, or if you're a therapist, to integrate them into your practice. I used to call, with my patients, I used to say, now I'd like to give you a concert just for you. Right? And I would integrate, and then I'd take what we call the solar harmonic spectrum, and I would make different concerts from the different intervals. And they'd be so happy. Even if it had nothing to do with the 5 elements, they'd still be happy. Right, but they have their own unique concert, and they're using it's to review the elemental qualities of perhaps of what we had discussed during the psychotherapy. In other words, to review, but now taking it deeper into the system. But it really can work so well just with everyday, life. You say, guys, tomorrow I need to do something, let me make a concert for myself, and you can just tap and move with it. Or make a concert for a friend, but you have to ask them what's coming, in your life that's challenging, and you have to look at it and say, what behaviors would you need to do that. We need to be louder, we need to be slower, we need to be quicker, so on. Simple things. What behaviors would you need, and how would those behaviors translate back into an 5-element strategy? And then you make it up. And I also want to say that if someone doesn't have what I call the solar harmonic spectrum of tuning forks, that's CDE.
Yes,
Yeah, behind you, CDE.
I have with their 8 set of 8. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the elemental set. You just have C and G. Someone says, well, how could that work? Well, it works through featured attention, right? So now you know the strategy of the element, you know what it is, and now you just make a concert with C and G. It's coherent, and it opens up the space that if that's what you're focused on, within C and G in the overtone series is all the element patterns anyway.
Yeah, I
Right?
was gonna ask that question about how do you do an element session with just the C and G.
The same way. You get the strategy, right? You understand it, you've internalized it, you know where you're going, and you do C and G, and then that's what you're focused on. The featured attention will allow yourself to entrain to the elements within the harmonic field of C and G. Because all the solar harmonic spectrum does with the other C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C is bring out harmonics that are already in C and G.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And it adds something quite beautiful, when you start making these concerts, and people will know that was different than what I got last time and things like that. And you can tap them louder and softer because what you know where you're going, you begin tapping those forks in a resonant congruency with where things are going. So you're tuned into it, or if you're tuned into it with somebody else, it's like playing music on a piano or a violin. You're playing to somebody, you adjust your dynamics, will automatically adjust to fit that person's particular element goal and what they want to do.
The way I understand that is the C and the G body tuners, which is really the foundational 2 tuning forks that are the interval of a perfect fifth. The overtones of those 2 have inside of it the solar harmonic spectrum and the Fibonacci.
And the Fibonacci.
And so,
and more, probably.
Yeah, right. But let's say basic.
Yeah, that's for sure. They're designed. They go with your physical body.
Which go with your physical body, which you probably explained. You always explain that in class how that works, and that wherever you need to focus your attention, it'll go into the place, is what you're saying. Like, because there's all kinds of little mini intervals, and that whatever you need will come forward to you in a sense.
That's correct. When you say focus your attention, that's what we call in science featured attention.
Right.
That's your focused attention, and that then will entrain exactly within this harmonic field, pull together what it is that you would be fine-tuned for you. There's no way to fine-tune it externally. There's only a way that you can open up the possibility of going into basically a fuzziness and allowing it at that moment to come together. I really think that that's a good example. If you're in a room and you have a dimmer switch on the wall and you have a group of people and you want those lights to fit what you want to talk about it with those people, you go up and down until you find the brightness of the light that fits with your featured attention for what you want to express. But if you only had on and off, it'd be really hard. You couldn't do it. It'd be bright or off or dark, right? So it's a non-binary way of doing things in sound healing once we understand it and how it functions.
And for the class, so this is a whole day workshop. Obviously, you'll be talking about how to give sessions, what are the 5 elements, exercises.
Yeah, we're definitely going to learn how to give sessions to ourselves. I mean, and to others. but sessions that are primarily, we would say, life goals in your life, what you want to accomplish, your visions of what you want. We're going to learn how to do just any ways that can help improve your life without having to have psychotherapy or something like that, and to prevent from having psychotherapy. But I'm not going to go into having you tell me, some challenges in your life that could be extremely personal. That'd be, that's not to say it couldn't be used for that, but it's not the kind of thing that we want to use it for in daily practice in our life.
So you could almost say it's like a vision. It's a vision boarding in a way with
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah. Well, we have a vision, we have a goal, we know what's coming next. We want to, with certain behaviors we know that we have to meet. Those could be, we want to learn to translate that into the five elements. It's a language. It's a stress management system, right, that stands on its own. But we have now, like I say, it was 500 years ago, I could go and do the same thing. Well, where are you going? Well, my sheep want to do this, and they need to get myself up in the morning, get myself going, and I have this vision for my sheep in a new field. I want to say, okay, what would that mean elementally that you have to do in order to accomplish that? And can we translate that into a strategy for both external movement pattern, whatever it may be, behaviors, or can we translate that into, you can just lay down, I give you a concert, and you'll focus on that and allow yourself to put together your resources spontaneously. That's the fuzzy logic algorithm.
I just have one more question. Will you go into, or you can explain a little bit now, you talk about as certain intervals being associated with elements,
Yes.
like the
We'll go,
fifth or the
yeah.
fourth.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about what that is. And that's ancient knowledge and how they viewed it, and versus modern science, with the one interval that we know for sure is C and G. But again, we're assuming that they had a knowledge of this based on their practices that we are only beginning to come to today.
Yeah.
So I have taken the associations from Western alchemy, where they work with the intervals, and also Eastern Ayurvedic and Eastern medicine and music, where they work with these intervals. These intervals are archetypes. They've been around for a long time. And I became very interested in them because they could be mathematically defined. They're not just musical intervals, they are spaces, sacred spaces. So if you have like a C and a G, we'd say musically that's a perfect fifth. So it's a certain relationship in sound that we get with the tuning forks, that no matter what tuning fork you buy from me, it says C and G, it's going to have that same relationship, guaranteed, right? But again, if we want to take these intervals and mix them, right? Sometimes we call that music. I like to call it a concert still, but the way they're mixed, you don't have to be a composer to do this. In fact, you could think of yourself as a spontaneous composer when you make a 5-element tuning fork session with a certain piece of music, which I prefer to call sound healing, but it can be looked at as a certain piece of music, individualized exactly for that person. But then you say, well, C and G is a relationship, C and G, but that same relationship can be really small as long as the space between is defined exactly by the ratio 2/3. Right? So as long as it's defined, you could have in your own, I like to say when you do it correctly, when you're coherent, the synaptic junctions in your brain, the space between them changes, and that's where we make, biochemicals, neurotransmitters. So now all of a sudden, as those spaces change in their relationship, you'll be making new neurotransmitters, and I like to say the neurotransmitters of coherence. And that's where my biochemistry understanding of nitric oxide and non-diamide molecules comes in. It's the biochemistry of coherence.
Okay. That's a lot.
And when we're coherent, we have access to the field. That's it. So now we have access. So what are we going to do? Right? And how are we going? We're now get good feedback to adjust to be more fiery, more watery, more airy, more earthy, more combinations of those, or more alpha, more beta, more theta, and so on. We now have the flexibility to move effortlessly in and out of different states. That is also my definition of enlightenment, right? That you have this ability just to keep going and moving and driving and so on, and you don't get all bound in. So we oftentimes say someone is earthbound. They're bound by the earth. You could be firebound, you can be airbound, or you can be a combination of them, like a binding that's holding you in, right? So we want to undo those bindings, right? And to undo them is just, and it's not like you undo them. Once you undo them at a certain level of frequency, they're permanently undone. It goes back through, God knows, if you believe in past lives, and it's just forever in the field. You can never be bound by them again, except for we go into a different level of functioning, and we can get bound again. So
kind of like your experience in New York, or being able to speak faster and seeing a new reality. It's like you don't unsee it. It's there with you all the time.
You can't.
You
It's
have
there with
access
you.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm comfortable going to New York City now.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't mean that I won't go someplace I'm not uncomfortable. Or there could be a slower than the slower I know, and a faster than the faster I know, right? And there'd be combinations in there I don't know, and it's guaranteed that they're going to show up. It's just, so I don't care. That's why I tell people, I don't care how enlightened you are, the shit's going to hit the fan. Whenever you think you're above somebody else, it's guaranteed you're going to get put in knocked off your pedestal really quick. So we have to always come with humility and realize that if somebody has a problem, that there's nothing wrong with them. It's just a challenge, and we have one. It's the same. This becomes in psychotherapy cognitive behavioral therapy. We learn how to speak with ourselves rationally in a way, instead of beating ourselves up, that we have a challenge in our life, and it's not all black and white. And that we can learn how to put things together in new ways in order to meet it, versus something's wrong with us.
Okay, well, this has been great, and I'm excited for the class because it's just so practical. I mean, it just seems like just a practical information that everyone should have.
I think so. I've thought it my whole life, and I'm excited for the class too. In a way, I would say I was just so tired of telling everybody. I don't. The elements are so basic, but I realize every now and then I wake up and things come together for me. It's natural. They come. My whole life I've been dealing with this, and I'm constantly coming into new states with it, right? And there's something about my clarity with the 5 elements. It's happened probably in this last year. A new clarity has come to me, a new understanding, and I don't want to. It doesn't eliminate my old understandings, but it refines them, right? And it refines them in a way that I feel, I guess, strong enough that I want to come out and share it without having to repeat myself about an old understanding. But I can see a new connection that I've made. I think that could really help. So I've agreed. I'll teach it again, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see everybody in class.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And class will be in person and hybrid and online.
Yeah.
In person's very limited. Here in Stone Ridge, New York. I'll be in Stone Ridge, New York for
which
this.
where you are right now.
Where I'm at right now, we'll be up. This is my downstairs music studio and sound studio. We'll be upstairs in the teaching studio. And here we have a little store, and we have a big breakout room outside. And I like to teach the class in the fall in October, because if you really like to see the leaves change colors, everything here is like beautiful.
Although no promises, because sometimes they fall
The
early or
weather,
late.
yeah, but we're in the good zone.
Okay, we're in the good. We're in training.
I'm doing the best I can, but still there'll be some colors unless we get a lot of rain or something like that. But the chances are of having a good fall are very much there. So if you're in person, you come, we get together, we have the whole day together. If you come online, then everybody, you're included in the class because they have big video monitors. So you get to see the class gets to see you, we interrelate. And of course, as normal online, if you can't be there, you get the recording, and we do good recordings.
Yes.
And any tuning forks that you want will be discounted. And we've done this many times before, and it's the same thing. I keep getting different perspectives, different ways of doing it, and more refined at what I do. So, and I definitely think teaching what I call hybrid, online and in person at the same time, is, at first it was hard for me. It's getting really easy now, and to the point that I just really believe it's the best way to go.
That's nice. I mean, I like it. I mean, I enjoy the online classes
Yeah.
when you're, with just you and you're in Florida, but I like the hybrid because when you're doing it, when you're online, you get the feeling of the people that are in the room also.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just a different
they're in
feeling.
they're really in the room with you.
Yeah.
It's really, it's,
Yeah. And you feel that even if you're taking it online.
yeah, I mean, I feel it online, but somehow when you have actual physical people in the room that say hi to you.
Well, when you're in Florida, you can invite your neighbors. I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that. I might. I'd give it a try.
Experiment. That would be a nice experiment.
Right, I'll experiment with that.
Okay, great. Well, we'll see
Okay.
you next time, and we'll all be from this hearing this podcast. We can all start to be conscious of our elements,
Yep.
our earth, our fire, and one thing also just to mention is like earth isn't the same. Like if earth is your base, everyone's baseline is different. Like my earth is
That's
different
right.
from her earth, and it's just relative. And that's what you teach a lot is about relationship too. Not one frequency does this, but it's the
No.
relationship between and
No,
you
Earth to an
relationship
elephant.
with. Yeah,
I like Earth to an elephant is very different than Earth to a firefly,
yeah, exactly. So
right?
that's a great.
Or a butterfly.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Earth is, all the elements are relative, and relative to the situation that you're going to express them in.
yeah. So it's just
So that,
infinite possibilities and combinations.
yeah, that we learn to put together and fine tune in order to meet certain situations.
Right.
And what you put together for one situation won't always work for the next one. So you have to that's when we want the skill of learning how to relax, be coherent, and continually create. That's the goal. That's the ultimate goal I always have.
Oh, awesome. Great goal.
Okay,
Tune the world.
we're done. Tune the world, right?